Nick Shelton. Welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Who is Nick Shelton and what is his mission?
So Nick Shelton is what I like to say, just a regular guy deluxe.
Yeah.
So it's like like with a car that has the extra options on it.
Yeah.
So I'm Air Force veteran, also spent nearly 20 years in the oil and gas industry as well. And, retired early at 49. I'm 51 right now and have been around, seen some things and done some things. Traveled to, I think 41 countries now, 42 countries. Yeah. So constantly trying to find processes to improve my life and other people's lives when I hit a sticky point in life, trying to break it down to processes to get through it. And then once I figured that out, I say other people might have the same.
It's interesting when I think about your journey. So first of all, just touching on, my mentor that was dear to me early on in life was Air Force veteran. And my grandfather was a pilot in World War II. And so it's always, I don't want to say it's a full regret, but I wish that I would have had, just done like 2 years in the military just to kind of, I don't know, you'd have that structure, I think, because I've hired some people and worked with some people who have had military experience and it's night and day compared to those who haven't. So I just want to make sure that's acknowledged in the space here. But it's interesting when you think about what you're doing now, you've done TEDx speaking and you're sort of, in your book, you're advocating for social anxiety and sort of the introvert, right? Do you think people who are like with you in the military or the oil and gas industry would be like, oh, that makes sense that he's doing that or not?
Well, I think that they would. I think they would say, oh yeah, this is on brand. This makes sense that he would do that. And a lot of them saw some of those struggles and the navigation through those struggles, because there was a lot of times where I saw opportunities that I was missing out on. And I said, well, if I could only be the type of person that could do that, would look at things. So like in the military, everyone knows about the making of the bed. That's the big thing. And,
yeah,
I figured, okay, so they have processes and steps that whether you're a genius or the opposite of a genius, everyone ends up at the same result. And so I said, well, can I do this with my life where I want this result? And if I can just break it down into the simplest steps, then maybe it's something that I not only could do, but I would do, and then I can get there. And so
I think you just gave me words to an experience that I have is that, I've thought of that too. You're like, there's a process where everybody gets the same results. And that's kind of what it's, just like the way that you make your bed is sort of the famous example, right? But I suppose I've sort of taken that philosophy and wondered in my own life what this looks like. So you've spent your time sort of trying to find what those strategies are. And I really like your TEDx, which I got the chance to watch the other day, right?
Thank you.
Number one is it was funny. I love the talk about the clams, but I think it's, you can see how at least fundamentally you kind of build using metaphors and, sometimes it's more than a metaphor, it's a structure. So you've found some things here that have been really sort of beneficial for your life. Could you name one or two of those that maybe would be helpful to anybody listening?
Sure. So the first thing is to show up. You have to show up, because sitting around your house plotting and planning doesn't actually get anything done. You have to be in the room. And what I figured is most of the time, and I was guilty of this and a lot of other people, you put too much pressure on yourself because you think when you show up somewhere, you have to be the star and know what to do. But no, just be there, and you can leave. You can just walk in and leave, but at least, just show up, and then these baby steps, and you don't have to know what to do. It's to your advantage to say, I don't know how this works, because there's always someone around that would love to share their expertise with you and say, oh, I get to explain how this works to this person. People love that. So and that kind of goes into the imposter syndrome too, that me and a lot of other people share, that if you say, I need to show up and people are going to be expecting me to know what's going on. No, say, I'm going to show up and say, how does this work? I don't know. And then you're off the hook. And now you're free to actually enjoy the experience, and someone's going to take you under their wing and show you how.
I think that there's a story that I may or may not have told on this show, where I went to sort of this sort of group coaching seminar thing, and we listed our strengths, and I remember the group sort of helps you identify one of your top strengths. And I remember feeling sort of humiliated. I was like, my top strength is showing up. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have no talent. Right. But I've come to realize that this is sort of overlooked, just a lot of people don't even show up. Right. And at least I was going out there every day. It was difficult to not perform maybe in certain circumstances to the level I wanted or whatnot, but showing up is important. So I love that you pointed that out.
It is huge. And I've been invited to events where people have told me the reason why I invite you is because you always show up. They say, I give out invitations and people say, oh, maybe, and then they don't end up showing up. But I was told, I can count on you. If I send you the invite, I know you'll be there. Yeah. Whether I contribute or not, they at least know that I'll be there.
I love that you described yourself as a normal guy deluxe, right? You got some deluxe features. First of all, people are sort of open with that question, and people answer, hey, I'm just a normal guy, and they sort of, they end up staying on that normal side. And I love that you said deluxe. What made you kind of say the deluxe? It was obviously fun and entertaining, but what is the deluxe part of Nick?
Right. Well, because I look at it like just having just those bonus features, like maybe you have the sunroof, maybe you have leather in the car, and so I feel, very, humble. I don't think I'm better than anybody, but I'm also not beneath anyone. And I think of it kind of like, and this might sound strange, but kind of like a Volvo, in that I look at it like elegance without arrogance. So you can have something that functions as nice, but you're not trying to show off. And so I kind of look at myself that way, where I have a healthy self-esteem, but I'm not like trying to peacock,
Sure.
so to speak.
I don't think it comes across that way at all. As a matter of fact, I took it as being sort of really healthy. I think maybe some of the, and not saying anything about the other folks who've been on the show, but when you say, oh, I'm just normal, but I like that. There's some nice features. I just thought I'd ask you about that.
Thank you.
So in your work, like I guess you would say your post-retirement work, right? What was it that happened? You retired from oil and gas at 49, and a lot of the work you're doing is to help other people. Where did this come from?
Right. So in our minds, we have this picture of what that's supposed to look like. So I said, oh man, I'm going to retire. And the reason people say, why were you driven to retire early? And it's because I have an older brother and we're very competitive. And that's my motivation.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, then I'll be done. It'll be endless summer. Just like when I was a kid, it'll be summer forever. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that if your whole life has not been doing whatever you want, and then all of a sudden you can do whatever you want, then that's great for maybe 4 months, maybe up to 9 months. And then you say, okay, I actually need to do something. I need some structure. So back to that kind of the military thing, and even in oil and gas, before I went into the Air Force, I would say, oh, I don't want any structure. I can just once again, I can do whatever I want. And then I realized maybe I need some structure. And then when I got that structure, I said, oh, this is where it's at. I thrive in structure. So then once I, got out of the military, I was floating a little bit because I needed to recreate structure, but then oil and gas got structure, then retired, no structure. And so I said, I need a new North Star. I need to orient myself to something. And I think a lot of people, you just figure, oh, I'll just go play golf. And then if I feel like down or something, then I'll just play more golf. But for me, I felt like I was fading away. Like I was kind of dying on the vine, and no one noticed, because it's so strange that because people would say, did your family and friends notice that you were, because I had hit a wall, like I was starting to be depressed because I didn't have that North Star anymore. And I said, nobody noticed. And that's even stranger, that no one noticed and it's hard to say, hey, something's wrong, I need help, when everyone's congratulating you, saying, sure, oh, I want to do what you did. And you're like, well, hold on. And no one, you kind of feel guilty because it's, I made it, I won, but then I'm supposed to say, oh, hey, now I'm depressed, so it's
Yeah.
like the going to the Olympics and then you get your medal and then you come back home and they say, okay, you're done. You're not going to any more Olympics. And they're like, well, I've trained my whole life for this. And so I look at it like the kind of the warrior out on the plains versus the wise man or village elder in the tent. And the spotlight is out there. You want to be out there. But they need you over here now. They need you to dispense some wisdom, and your value is more, instead of achievement based, it's more relationship based.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I love that you shared that. Thank you. And I think that is something a lot of people sort of experience, right? They have this sort of enviable situation in life that's like, this is not what's in here. And so as a matter of fact, a lot of people that I've worked with, I work as a coach with people, and myself, I sort of came to that as well. It's like, well, what am I going to do? I think it's interesting. And I wonder what it was about sort of the need for structure and the need to sort of give back and work with the community that made you want to help people in the ways that you have. Was there anything personal or professional that led to these areas where you sort of focused?
Yes. So for me, it went from, so that phase one, that achievement based, it's like I am what I do and how well I do it, to that relationship based, like what am I to and who am I to my family, my community, and these relationships. And so one day I was sitting around, I noticed that these little things that I could do, like if I made it so it's not about me anymore. Now it's about, what I can give, and my success started coming through other people's success. And so there was a time I was sitting around and I was thinking, like, what if? So in my mind, I just said, do angels exist? And not in a religious way or anything, but it just went in my mind. Do angels exist? And if they do, how do I know I'm not one? And I said, maybe I can do miraculous things. I just can't do them for myself or anyone that I know. It has to be for strangers. So I said, well, let's go and test this out. So I would go out and so I'd wake up in the morning and I'd say, I'm going to make someone's day today. This would be like, I wake up, who's it going to be? And it's because I can't control my day, but I can absolutely make sure somebody else has a great day. So I'd say, so eyes open, I'm out there and looking for, how's it going to be? What's going to happen today? And then it could be something as simple as recognizing somebody as like, I see you. You are a human being. So many years ago, I was a Subway sandwich artist, at the Subway sandwich place, and people would treat us like robots, just give me this, give me this. And they never saw us. And I remembered when people would actually acknowledge us as people, it made you go, oh, wow, finally. And so now I try to do that for people at, any of these restaurants. I pause and say, hold on, how are you? And I actually have a little conversation. People in line are like, come on, let's go. I want to acknowledge, I might see them. Somebody, it could be as simple as listening to them. You could pay for a coffee for the person behind you, or it could be something bigger, like one example that's kind of fun that, if people want to do this, they can keep it simple. One time I was like, I would like to be on a yacht. I've never been on a yacht before. So it was like on a Wednesday. And so I chartered a yacht for Saturday. And I said, other people would like to go on a yacht. Let me go to the mall and find some people and say, I have a yacht on Saturday. Do you want to go? And then people, yes. And I was thinking, man, if I had a yacht in high school, that would have changed my entire life. It'd been way better. But so then Saturday came and I had a few friends, but then a bunch of strangers from the mall were out on this yacht together experiencing this moment. And I remember somebody said, this is the best day of my life. And I'll never forget that, because I was like, oh, I'm a part of that. And they might have had a better day since then. But at that moment, I was giving that. So once again, it can be as simple as just listening to somebody or these small things. It doesn't have to be something grandiose like that. But I was like, I would like this experience. Other people most likely would enjoy the experience too. Let's share that with them. And so the thing now that gets me going is helping people through this way, putting out these little miracles, and then also being a mentor, because when somebody has success, if they come to me and they say, hey, I need your advice on this, and then I give it and they do it and it works, and they come back and they say, yeah, that worked, then I'm having my success through them. And so that's like way better than just my own just selfish success. It's much more meaningful to me. So that's my purpose these days.
I think that, you're expressing like the thing that a lot of us, it takes to, sometimes we get in our 40s and 50s to realize this is that if you get all that success, the checklist, you know what I mean? I've got the job, I've got the call, like you said, you're competitive with your brother and you're like, okay, it's going to be endless summer now. And it wasn't. You realize that the reason why you're doing all that was for connection. It was to experience success through other people. Those are some of I know for me and for people I've talked to, these are some of the most valuable experiences of their lives. These are things they reflect on. And it seems like, you created that. And what a joyful moment. I'm just trying to, and the other thing that popped in my mind while I was listening to you is, what people must have thought when you're in the mall asking, there's that, it's like a crazy man alert, right?
Yes, is this a trick? What's going on?
Yeah, right. It might be, it's like, what's the scam here? And it really sort of resonates with me as I heard you say that is, there are probably people who want to have this experience, but don't do it because they don't want to be seen as, Ryan the crazy guy or Nick the crazy guy. Did you have anybody that be like, no, thanks. That's weird. Leave me alone, please.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd say more people than not were like, because they can't believe that would happen. There's
Sure.
gotta be some kind of trick to it,
Yeah.
but there wasn't. But the ones that took the risk were like, well, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Then they were there. They got the experience.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of little things like that. If you just keep your eyes open and you think about it, there's plenty of times where I've wanted to experience something and I said, let me create a shared experience for other people to experience it too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. So you refer to yourself as a life reset strategist for men at a crossroads in your current sort of project that you're working on, Nick. What can you tell me about that?
Well, so after the retirement thing and I was trying to find that North Star, I said, I was laying in bed one night. I said, if I only had a reset button or something that I could hit and just kind of start this over. Somebody had said something about, well, in another life, I could do this. And I was like, ooh, in another life. I said, well, that other life could start right now. There's nothing saying that I can't, just say goodbye to the old version of me and start Nick 2.0. And so I said, well, let's do a reset. So it starts off with, and I said, since I develop processes for everything, I said, well, let me put together a process and go through it. And then when it worked, then I said, okay, now I have this process and other people might want to do this. So it starts with an audit. And so I had to audit, not the scary IRS audit, but the a personal audit where because in order to change anything, you have to know what your baseline is, know where you're at. So I'd say, okay, so what parts of me are helpful that I want to carry forward with this new version of me? And kind of like if you were writing a movie screenplay or script and you're developing a character. And so now this new version of me, since I can pick whatever I want, who says that I have to stay the same? What isn't going to be helpful anymore in this new version and that I can let go of? And then what do I want to add in? So like, for example, I might be I'm getting ahead of myself. So the audit, we're just seeing where we're at. And then once we have an account of where we're at, then we're going to honor and release the old self. So for me, that looked like I wrote a letter to myself acknowledging, hey, great ride. You did all these things and I forgive you for the not so good things. And then, but I'm taking over now and yeah, we'll see you later. And then I do like a bowl burning ceremony where I, light the letter on fire, release it. And then we start the new. We take those things that we wanted to carry forward to this new character and we put those in place. And then I have some prompting to say, okay, well, previously I was a morning person. Do I still want to be a morning person? Maybe I want to be a night person now. And there's nothing saying that I can't do that. Do I still want to eat the same things? Do I want my morning routine to be the same? Do I want to exercise? Do I want to exercise less? Like, what do I want to do? And then when we're plugging these things in, I always tell people when we're in that achievement mode, there's a lot of stuff that kind of falls to the wayside that we can revisit now and see if it still works for us. So for example, in high school, I used to write poetry all the time. And then after high school, I never wrote a poem again. And
yeah.
So I was like, well, let me, and I don't know if I became too cool or if I was too busy, but I said, let me revisit that because there might be something there. And so either If it's not there, if I try and I'm like, oh, this isn't for me anymore, I don't have to do it. But if there is something, like when I was 10 years old, my dream was to be a chef, but then I never became a chef. But now it's like, well, let me check that out again and cook. And then I go, oh, yes, I still love this. Let me incorporate this back into this new version of myself. And so we're building this new version, and then I'll talk to you next about how to get that to stick, but you might have a question at this point.
Yeah, no, well, what I love is that, I think I sort of had a similar experience, around the time I was like, 40. I was like, I got all this stuff off my list, and now I'm in a new town by myself. COVID's about to hit. I'm going to be isolated, and I got everything on the list that they gave me. But what I love about what you did is I sort of had a plan, but you were like, you took it to the next level. Like you had the ceremonies and things like that. Eventually, I think I use the word ceremony. I don't know. Some people might align with that, but the bull burning, right? I mean, that is meaningful when you see things like that. At one time I sort of found my way in a meditation. I can't remember the name of the meditation, but the idea was we were in it and we were supposed to pretend like there was a bowl of fire and throw all these, bad beliefs that we had in it. And it was like, wow, that actually worked. I was surprised at that, just using your imagination. So I love that you set out to do this. I love that you made a big deal out of this. You were like, I'm going to reinvent this. And who do I want to be? Who is it now that I'm in charge that I want to be? And I guess, you sort of said it. So you planted the idea in my head. I'm like, okay, how do you get it to stick? Because it seems like some people might go through this and be like, okay, that was a fun weekend or a fun month. But I got to get back to normal life. So how did you make it stick?
Right. So there's a few things. It's not just one thing, because the old you is going to be trying to pop back up. So first thing is, that's also I address in my TEDx speech, which is like the power of uniforms. So for your listeners, my best friend is a police officer, and when he puts on the uniform, whether he feels like it or not, he is a police officer and he has to conduct himself as such. So I was thinking, well, maybe with the power of uniforms, whenever anyone puts on their uniform, they are that thing. So why not have a private uniform? Could be a watch, a bracelet, a necklace. And so I say, well, previous Nick didn't wear necklaces, but now new Nick has this necklace, and that necklace lets me know that I am this version of myself now. And so that's one thing, and you can touch it as the reminder. But then there's some people that say, well, I need more than that. Yes. Okay. We're going to add more onto it. And so and this can be adjusted, this next thing, but there's a kind of a default that I recommend everyone do. And that is, you sign up and take a dance class, a cooking class, and a language class. And what this does is all three of them.
Okay.
All three. And, again, they won't be every day. It might be like one might be Tuesday, Thursday, one might be Monday, Wednesday, or something like that. But do all these things, and these are environments that you are going to show up at, and you can't really hide in any of these because they're very intimate. So the dance class, you're touching someone, dancing and changing partners. The language class, you're butchering a language with a new person, and the cooking class, you're burning a souffle with a new person. So in these places, it forces you to engage with people, and you are introducing yourself as this new version of you. They don't know anything about the old you. All they know is, okay, you've developed this is who I am now, and you're going to introduce yourself. So people ask me all the time, well, I used to introduce myself as my title, but how do I introduce myself now? And so I'd say, you introduce yourself by what you're working on. So I could say, hi, I'm Nick, and I'm working on getting my pilot's license. I'm interested in beekeeping and kayaking, and then now they know, okay, pilot's license, beekeeping, kayaking. And people might say, well, how are the dance people? Are they going to have those hobbies? No, not necessarily, but they might, or they might know someone and say, oh, my brother keeps bees. You should probably talk to him. I can make that introduction. And so this also kind of some of the things from my book, An Introvert's Guide to World Domination, where I show introverts how to build networks. And this is one of the tips that I give when you also show up in a new country and you're trying to make connections and build a social network really fast. Same thing, dance class, cooking class, language class, but you're introducing yourself to these people as this new version of you. And now that's all they know. So now this helps reinforce that version of you because that's all they know. They only know you as that. So when you are talking with them or anyone you meet through them, they only know this new version of you. So you will be that person in that new social network. And so sure, when you go back to Thanksgiving with your family, then yeah, you're like, no, I'm new now. And they're like, yeah, whatever, pass the pepper or whatever. But
I love just the leaning into that whole do these things that are outside of your comfort zone and introduce yourself as the new person, because what you're sort of doing by doing that is you're taking the new you and you're just creating a new network too. That's going to reinforce that, right? Because like you said, our family knows who we are. And, perhaps you've had the experience like I have where it's like, okay, this is me now. And then like you come back next time. Okay, now this is me now. Right. And so because you didn't have that reinforcing. So I love that. So you did these things yourself. You took these 3 courses.
Yes, I did this all. This is not theory. This is all me doing these things. And I go, okay, this works. Now I can suggest it to other people. And then the next thing is also curating your environment. And so if everything's exactly the same, you have to say, well, in my home, what needs to kind of change to support this new version of me? And, my thing was extreme because when I retired, we moved down to Mexico and so got rid of all the old stuff. And then, Mexico didn't quite live up to, and, no offense to Mexico.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of different places. It's a big country, but that part that we were in, it wasn't quite the fit for the time. So came back to the States and now got a new place. And now this new place is reflective of, this new versions, so I'm not telling everyone you have to move into a whole new place, but if you can, yeah, that will definitely fast forward it. But you could just get a few things, like a few accent pieces around your house and you go, okay, now let's change out this one area rug. This rug is what Nick 2.0 would have, and this style of living. So just a few things just as a reminder that you've made that shift. So you just got to get that environment in place as well.
Yeah. So then, okay, so now you've changed your environment. You sort of began to change your network. Is it just a continuation of these steps? Is there more?
So I always talk about, finding your purpose, but it's really, that's so people can understand it, but it's really what happens is it's revealed once you this is kind of getting you into alignment. So you're exploring all these new things and bringing up from that audit, bringing up some of the stuff you left behind, testing that out, and you're in your new network, you're getting exposed to a lot of new ideas. And some of the people ask me, well, if I chose, say, beekeeping, and I said, hey, that's what I'm interested in, now am I stuck with that forever? No, you're trying it on, and then you can say, okay, well, after 30 days, I've decided that I don't want that. No one's forcing it. You don't have to keep that. You can try something else. And while you're meeting these new people and they tell you what they're doing, you might go, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Rock climbing. Maybe, let's try that out, snowshoeing, so there's all kinds of different things that people do. And so it's more like it's going to be revealed to you through this alignment, through this going through these steps. You'll say, oh, this is where I want to, orient myself to right now. And once again, it doesn't have to be you're choosing forever. It's like for right now, I'm going to do this because this is lighting me up. It's getting that fire going. And it can change. You are allowed to change it if something else comes along that you want to orient yourself to, or if that's not doing it for you anymore. But it helps get that spark of life into a flame again.
Yeah. That's incredible. There's a part in this description where, it was for your life reset strategist for men at a crossroads. And I think it's clear what your sort of crossroads was sort of retirement, perhaps. What do you mean by crossroads in general? It's interesting that you could have just used retirement, but you used crossroads.
Well, so when I started this whole thing, I was like, well, when men retire, they might feel this same thing. But then others were coming to me saying, hey, I'm going through a divorce or just finished a divorce. And my whole life as it was is no longer. And I need to rebuild myself from this. My life was my wife and kids in this family unit. Now I'm in this studio apartment over here on the other side of town trying to hold it all together. I need to reinvent myself. How do I do that? Then it was like these major life changes. I was like, oh, okay, so it's not just necessarily retirement. It's anytime you're facing some major change, or maybe nothing has changed and you need it to change. And you just say, I've just been kind of going through the motions for years, and I would like to open that up and see what's possible. That can also serve as that. So it's kind of like I pictured it when you reach a point where you say, well, something needs to change here, but I don't know how to really do that. But you need to make a decision. That's for those people that are in that spot where they know that something has to change, but they just need the steps. They need a little light to be, shown, light to shine on something. Yes. To give them the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it is? This is just a curiosity question. What do you think it is about life that causes us to get to these sort of crossroads, right? I mean, do you have any insight into that? Have you been doing this work a little bit?
So I think so, and I can, from my experience, we're all told or shown that like it's gotta be, you're supposed to do it this way, and so kind of back on the achievement thing. So you are what you do and how well you do at that achievement spot. And then some people they find themselves in positions where, they didn't even want to, they're achieving or doing something that they didn't want to do in the first place. Like an engineer that I knew, I said, well, what made you want to be an engineer? And he said, I never wanted to be an engineer. My parents wanted me to be an engineer. And so that just been working down this path that wasn't even their path. And then there's all this spotlight on this achievement, but it's kind of like no one ever tells you that there's the other side. So once again, back on the relationship side of things, if we look at these like sports teams, there's the guys out on the field, men or women out on the field, whatever, people out on the field. And then there's the back office of the team. And nobody ever says, man, I hope to be in the back office one day. Man, we're going to draft some good players. No, but they're just as important to the victory as are the stars out there on the field. But nobody ever, says you need to maybe look at this spot. No, it's like you have to be out here. And even if it doesn't feel like it aligns with you, too bad. You're supposed to be out there and, sit on the bench out there and be miserable. Or you can really be thriving in this other spot. So I think that just being out of alignment is what causes a lot of this. And then you say, well, why would that happen in the first place? But I think it's just because just growing up, our society has just kind of pushed us all in the same direction and glorified this one path, and anything that kind of falls outside of that, it's not shown in a positive light. And then even when you're on that path, it's really tough to feel like you measure up as well. So I hope that that's a adequate answer.
I think that's exactly right. I suppose I'm still trying to fully understand that myself. And it's sort of this strange catch-22 where, you sort of have to do something with your life. So you kind of start, I might be interested in this. But so many of us, we just kind of, without considering ourselves, we just go all the way, right? And then we find ourselves as an engineer being like, oh, I never wanted to do this. It just is, it's what I felt my parents wanted me to do or whatever, And it is interesting though, because I think we look back, and I, like you, looked back a few years ago and was like, wow, I used to write poetry in college, but I never showed it to anybody because I was like, it's probably terrible. I don't know, but I like it, And years ago, I just thought, well, I can't make any money at this, right? So why do it? But it was something that I revisited. I don't know if it was the thing, but it sort of pointed me to a direction, creativity or, just creation in general. But I think one of the themes I hear is that when you have a passion like that, it's hard to figure out how to use that in, money making way, which is sort of the big thing when you're in your, late teens and early 20s and even 30s. It's like, how do I do this? And so you get back to this place where you're like, okay, you sort of, you work your way through this money thing a little bit and you're like, well, this is just not, I'm not writing anything. I'm not creating anything in the way that I want to. And so this need for reinvention comes up. I don't know. It's just a theory right now.
Right. Yes, exactly. But yeah, you're right there is a lot of, there are people out there that say, yeah, just monetize your passion thing, and that might work for some things, but I know that going back to when I wanted to be a chef, there was a time where I thought, well, if I did this for my job, I would not enjoy it. Because when I'm cooking just out of passion, I'm choosing, oh, I think I want to try this out. I'm going to make this. But if I'm just somewhere and they say, hey, someone ordered this, make it, then I'm like, well, I didn't want to cook that today.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it would take the enjoyment out of it. But at the same time, yes, if you can, it is tricky trying to say, I love these things, but I can't make money at it. So, I'm going to walk away and do something that does not align with me, but I'm going to do it for the money and then just forget about this other part of myself that is in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sort of like it's a strange sort of self-abandonment, right? That I think causes some pain for people. So, one of the things that I see as a common thread in people that I talk to, like yourself and like even CEOs and whatnot, is that there's a sense of self-trust that I would say is probably, if you had to put this on one of those metrics, like you trusted yourself to get this done. And I just wonder what it was that, that put you in the position where you're like, you know what, I'm going to change. And, trust doesn't mean that you're not going to fail, right? Or you believe you're not going to fail. That would, but you trusted yourself to navigate your way through it. What gave you that self-trust, Nick?
Well, I'd always figure everything is figure-outable. And yes, there is a lot of failure. So it's not like any of these things, just like when I was helping introvert, shy, and socially awkward people navigate all these networking things and building social circles. There was a lot of failure in there because, I was the guinea pig and I say, well, what about this? Okay, no, not that. What about this? No. And then I go, okay, this, more of this, so then it's just this trial and error, figuring out what's not working, what is, comfortable enough to do, just like, when people have social anxiety and things like that. And I would say, okay, well, you can do this. So then I put myself in the situation and then I say, well, I was able to do it, but, I almost completely crumbled and broke down doing it. So I'm not going to suggest other people do it because I say,
Yeah.
There's got to be an easier way. So then when I find a way that I go, okay, that worked, but it didn't, and it didn't tear me down to do it. Okay, this is something, let's work on this. This is an easier thing. And then so for this, I was like, well, I'm process oriented and these things have always worked for me. I just need to develop it step by step. And each step you go, you say, you try some variables and then go, okay, these didn't work, but there's always, you're like, there's a way. I just have to find out what that step is that I could do. And so since it has worked ever since I started doing it, back in the military days, I said, okay, well, I can trust myself to just put in the time and figure it out and just document it. And then we're leaving that path, the breadcrumbs along the ways that other people can do too. So the short answer is, since I had success doing it before, like, okay, I can do it again. I just have to figure out what the steps are. And I need that clarity. So when I'm talking with people about when someone says, hey, I know how to do this, my big question to them is, what is the path? How clear is the path? How clear can you explain the path to me? Because there's a lot of times where people glaze over some stuff or skip some steps. You do this and now you're here. And I'm like, what? You're missing a lot of stuff in there. We have to break it down.
Yeah. I think there's also, what I hear in there is there's an okayness with failure, right? Like you sort of highlighted, you're like, I was process oriented, but there was a lot of stuff that didn't work. And you kind of did this like swipe off the table movement, at least is what I saw,
Yes.
What makes you okay with like failure? I think people spend a lot of time going out of their way to avoid any kind of failure.
Right. So for me, this has always been, I always think about it as a story. Like, this will be a good story to tell. So it could be just like asking someone out on a date. You could be like, well, if they say yes, then you actually have to go out on the date. And then that's terrifying also. And if they say no, then you're like, man, I hope it's not. Here's a little thing. So when I was in the dating market, I would always say, I hope it's either good or really bad. I don't want just a mediocre date, because if it's bad, then I can be like, you'll never guess what happened on this date. It was so bad. And if it's good, then, that's great too. But if it's okay, then I'm like, nothing happened here. We're wasting our time. So with these failures, I would look at it like, okay, don't do this because this can happen. And then I have a story. And so I'd say this will be a great story. I've done stand-up comedy, quite a bit of stand-up comedy myself also. And there have been times where I have been mercilessly booed. Not a lot of times. I've done some good shows, but there have been times when I've been booed and I'm standing up there and then some of my friends will go, how can you just stand up there when that's happening? And I say, because when I'm up there, I'm thinking, oh man, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this later. It's,
Yeah.
and so it's just reframing it. So I found that, so I guess to summarize this, I can be okay with failure if I just reframe it. And that's a lot of things in life. If you just say, okay, well, what's a way I can look at this that can make it okay? Instead of looking at it like, oh, this is the worst thing, I'll never recover. I just go, man, this is in the stories, in the sagas. This always happens to the main character. Something like this. It's never just the smooth thing. They always have these weird twists that make the story interesting to follow.
Yeah.
And so
it reminds me of this. I don't know why I thought of this, but I thought this was interesting. I saw this social media clip one time, and it was this woman randomly interviewing people on the street. And she goes, would you rather be $50 million in debt or have $50 million? And of course, everybody was saying, I want $50 million. And the guy goes, $50 million in debt. What kind of a story is I have $50 million? Yeah, right. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. You know what I mean? But, then I could overcome the $50 million in debt, and that's a story. So that's what I would want. I'm like, that's a guy who thinks like you do.
Right. I would prefer the $50 million, actually.
To be clear. Yeah.
Yes. It's just to anyone listening. But yes, if you were able to get $50 million in debt, you're like, that has to be a story because someone was willing to lend you that much that you were able to get that much in debt. So there has to be some epic story around that. And if you were able to get that much in debt, then yeah, you're probably able to pull yourself out of it as well, which would ultimately be more entertaining to talk to that person at a cocktail party than the other one.
Yes, it would. We talked about purpose a lot here, but, I understand you have a 2-question test to help people align a decision with their purpose in like 60 seconds. How did that come about? Tell me about the dignity scan. Where's that come from?
Well, the dignity scan is because some people, once again, going back to that Crossroads, they're saying, well, before I can rebuild, I'm just trying to make it through the day, so just to try to get that pilot light going back in you again to remind you that you are still in there. And then because you need to recognize that you are someone worth rebuilding in the first place. And so for people in that situation, I created the dignity scan. And then so that it has you just take out a sheet of paper and just write down. So for example, a piece of wisdom that I have. And then you'd say, okay, and how do I know? And then you'd write, how do you know? Then like one person. And so you don't have to list a whole bunch of things, but you say one person that I care about. How do I know that I care about them? One person that cares about me. Is there anyone that's ever cared about me? How do I know? And then like a value that I've kept. How do I know that I've kept it? And then like a memory that reminds me that I'm capable. How do I know? And then so when you write this out, then it kind of reminds you, okay, there is something there. It kind of gets those wheels turning and that little light going. And it reminds you that you are in there. You have something that can be rebuilt. And there's these little tiny shifts that makes when you can write that out. This, how do I know? And that starts that foundation. So then you can have the strength to make it through the day, maybe do a bigger audit and see where you're at and start the rebuild. But if you don't have that little bridge of dignity, then you might not even think that it's worth it to rebuild.
I mean, that seems like quite a profound test there. I mean, that is sort of, because that must have been something you had experienced. Like, who am I to want to rebuild? And then so where did that sort of come from? That come from your own experience, or did you take that from working with other people, or was there?
Well, a little bit of both. And I had some dark days myself where felt like I was at the end. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Well, let's kind of look. And so there'd be like this little voice in there that would just be like, well, let's hold on. Let's look at some things. And how do I know? How do I know this? Because there's a lot of times in our thought process where we just say, well, this is it. Just, so you get the $50 million in debt. I'm finished. That's it. It's over. But then you could be like, well, hold on. I was able to get here. So somebody trusted me enough that I was able to do this. Okay. So, and how do I know that they trusted me? Well, they lent me $50 million that I squandered.
Right. Yeah.
And then so like, okay, so I have that. Or at least I had it, but there's something there that was in me that was able to get somebody to do that. So that's still in me that can fix it because I was able to get in that situation. You wouldn't be able to get in that situation if you didn't have some kind of skill. And then, so, who believed in me to do this, even though they might not believe in me anymore, but how did I know that they believed in me? And then, what were these values? You can list it all out. And then that also, instead of you sitting there going, well, I lost it, I'm done. You could be like, well, my ability to get into this spot is the same ability that I can use to get out of the spot. What would that look like? And then you can start, once again, plotting this out and seeing what the options are. What's the smallest step that I could take? What could I do that would be a step in the right direction? Like, who do I know? This, for me, it kind of went back to the networking thing again, because I was thinking, well, everything out there, somebody has everything that I would like to do. Someone's either doing it or they have access to it. So if my network is good, who do I need to talk to figure this out? If we go back to the yacht thing, like, I don't need my own yacht, but if I know somebody, some people have yachts. So if I just know someone, they're not going to be out there by themselves on the yacht. Just, I'm out here, right. Just me. So if I know them, then I have access to that yacht. I have access if there's some investment bankers or something and I know them, I have access to whatever's going on with them. If there's a pilot, like I used to go to pilot meetups and there's all pilots for these small planes and they say, well, what do you fly? And I'm like, I don't fly anything. And they're like, what? And I'd say, I just wanted to meet pilots. I just thought it'd be cool to know more pilots.
That. Yeah.
And I did take some flying lessons for a little while just to try to be cool. It's like, girls like pilots. So I'll take some lessons, but it didn't stick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know pilots now. So I'm like, I'll just know pilots. It's easier.
So you also, in 2020, you wrote a book. It was called, what is it called?
An Introvert's Guide to World Domination.
That's what it is. And so you don't strike me as an introvert, Nick. So where did this come from? Is that the truth about you or what?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. But once you know the steps, how to navigate, plus introversion is more about energy, like, So an extrovert would start out the day with low energy, and then every time they interact with someone, they're getting energy in, and the introvert starts out with like a certain amount of energy, and then each interaction, it's taking energy. So you might need to go and lay down somewhere after your social interactions to recharge. But then I was shy and socially awkward as well, but I was like, well, there's got to be some steps. There's got to be a way to get through this. And so that's why how the book came about was I was invited out to Barcelona, Spain to give a speech on networking for introverts. And I was like, is anyone even going to show up? A bunch of people showed up and everyone was taking notes. And I said, people actually are interested in this. And then someone came up to me and said, where can I get your book? And I didn't have a book. I said, I don't have a book. So I was like, well, someone asked, so I know what to say, so I'll write it down. And then that's what kicked that off.
So somebody knew you were an introvert. Somebody somewhere, right?
Yeah. Because I definitely, it was a struggle in the earlier days trying to navigate all this. I had to go and a superpower of introverts is observation. So I'd just go and I'd watch. And I think I talked about this a little earlier in the podcast that I'd watch and observe, and I'd say, well, what is working for that person? And is there something that I can take from that I would actually do? Because, somebody just walks in and they're like, hey, everybody, I've arrived. Then I'd be like, okay, I'm not doing that. But I'd be like, okay, is there something about how they walked in? So that's where like the cape walk comes in. If you walk in like you're wearing an invisible cape, then at least your posture is going to be
Yeah.
the right way, and you're going to look, you might not feel confident, but at least you'll give the appearance of it. So it's these little tiny things like that.
Well, I love that you brought up that that's probably the common misnomer about introverts is that there's kind of it's about energy. It's not necessarily about outgoingness. Like that's a separate sort of trait, right?
Yes.
You're obviously very outgoing. And I guess I was just it occurs to me that way, just in our conversation today, but
Yes.
You might be an introvert still. So, well, that's interesting how that book came about.
Yes.
What made you decide on the title to World Domination? Just practicing some comedy?
Right. Well, I just was thinking, so it's not necessarily taking over the world. It's like your inner world, dominating your world. So I was thinking, I was trying to have more control over myself and my world, but it's an introvert's guide to inner world domination doesn't have the same ring to it.
It does not. No.
So it's just, if you can get those steps out and get aligned so that when you show up, because we already talked about showing up being the most important thing. When you show up, if you just know the next step, then everything is so much easier. If you show up and you go, I don't know what to do, which is fine. You can say, I don't know what to do, or you can leave also because you showed up. But what I try to do is just provide, so for myself first and then for others, just if you know the next step, okay, I've walked in the room, I did the invisible cape thing, I walked in. What's next? Look for you're supposed to arrive early. Arrive early so you get the lay of the land, so you don't have to try to find a seat that's available. You can be first, you can see who's coming in, decide who you want to talk to, decide where you're going to be, go over to the food. Next step, go to the food, get yourself something. This will give you something to do with your hands. 3 cookies, eat 1, the 2 are for display, pen in your hand or some literature for the thing. Now you can watch people come in. You could set up at a table. You can hunt introverts, not actually hunting them, but you're looking around the edges to see who looks like you feel. So somebody's over there and they're kind of like on their phone, looking to see what the Kardashians are up to or something. You're like, they're not doing anything. They're just trying to look busy. And so go and rescue them. Okay, that's the next step. Then you're like, okay, well, you can't just be us 2 because if I want to get out of here, it's hard to split from you. So we got to bring in a third person, a confused person, say, let's rescue this person. Bring them over. You got 3 now. So now if you need to leave, boom, easy for you to leave. You leave them together, or the conversation can carry much better with 3 than it can with 2. 4 is too many. 2 is too few. You want 3. Yeah. But it's just knowing the next step, and then it just makes it so all you have to do is just remember what's the next step, and it just guides you right smoothly through.
You got a process for everything. I love that. I no one believed me, in my career, because my career, it requires me to be outgoing. But I'd be like, I'm an introvert, so I would go to places like that, and I would do that thing, and I'm sitting there thinking the two's too little and 4's too much. Like, wow, I wish I didn't get that far in my research.
Right. Yeah. You have to think of all the variables, because you're like, what do I do now? And that would be me. I would go, and if somebody came to me and said, well, what happens with this situation? And I hadn't experienced it, I'd say, I'm going to go and put myself in that situation. And then when I'm there, I'll go, okay, I'm in it now. How do I figure this out? And that's how me as the guinea pig, I go in there.
Is that process?
Do it.
Yeah. You're like, you're always experimenting with Nick.
Yes.
Yeah. So this program, what does it look like if somebody was listening right now and was interested? What does it look like to take part in this program?
So the reset button program, resetting your identity, is it's one-on-one. It's a one-on-one coaching thing. I know there's other people that say a member of my team will do this, but nope, you're getting me, because I like to really get in there. And once again, like I told you, your victory is my victory. So I want it to be personal and help with the audit, help keep you accountable and build you back. And every step that you take that is a victory, that shines light on me too. I share in that victory. So yeah, it's basically a one-on-one program that we start off from the beginning. We'll get that dignity scan through, and then an audit, and then we just build the new you from the pieces that you want to keep. And then we celebrate and keep it going.
So if people wanted to connect with you, can they connect with you online, or what does that look like?
Yes, they can go to resettheman.com, and women can go there too. There's plenty of women that show up as well, but I needed a domain name. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's easy to find, pop right up, my smiling face, and connect with me. And I'm happy to help any way I can, whether it is with rebuilding your identity or if it's with, helping with your network or, speaking, things like that. Love to help.
Yeah. So, Nick, as we get close to the end of our time here, I just wonder what was something that maybe I should have asked you or I didn't ask you or you were planning on me asking? Anything show up like that?
Well, let's see. I would say, I know that we've talked about the showing up several times now, and we've discussed it in detail, but I just would remind your listeners that it's just show up, even if you don't want to, just get in that room. There was somebody had talked about, like, for gym purposes, they'd say, just go to the gym, walk in, turn around and walk out. You don't have to exercise, but it gets you in the habit of going. Just go out there. Nothing happens if you're just sitting in your house watching TV. You just get outside, show up, and it doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be every week. Just start small. Once a month, go out somewhere new and show up. And that is the first step, because we talked about just the next step. Just do that and you'll be on your...
So I have a bonus question here, and I'm going to put the link to your TEDx talk in the notes as well, the show notes for this. But I wonder, have you since had clams?
I have not. I have not had clams. I had all I could eat clams forever.
And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you'll have to visit that link, the TEDx link. That was a funny story. I really enjoyed that. So you'll have to visit that. Listen, Nick, I really enjoyed your positivity, your energy, and really just your process or your focus on process, excuse me. And that really, the way that you do it is just it feels so light on this side, and sort of sometimes when you hear process, I don't know, it seems like it weighs heavy, but there's something light about the way that you do it and the way that you sort of interpret and reframe failure that just seems really digestible and powerful. And so I thank you for bringing that perspective on the show today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You just want doable steps, easy doable steps. We try not to make it technical. We try to make it as easy as possible so you can and will actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I love that you brought up again is showing up is a big part of it. A lot of times we all have these plans that we're sitting home planning about, but we're not actually going and taking the first step, right? And so go show up to the life you want, right? So I really appreciate your time. This is a great conversation and a great way to head into the weekend for me, at least. So
yeah, me as well. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Nick.